Welcome to the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schupnecht, and today's guest is Amanda Cassar, author of Financial Secrets Revealed. Let's get into it. Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining me on the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'd love
Oh,
to
Kelly, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'd love to start out. Well, first of all, having you introduce yourself. Also, I didn't ask you before we started recording where you are, but I hear an accent and I'm wondering if you are where I think you are. So please introduce yourself.
I am Amanda Cassar and I am based on the beautiful Gold Coast in Australia.
Man, I'm so jealous. I've never been to Australia. But yeah, I am.
Look, if I had
so
$1 for
jealous.
every American who told me that.
I know. It's quite a trek from here. And it's in fact the time zone difference. So right now, at the time of this recording, it's 4 p.m. on Tuesday here. Share
Oh, I'm
your
coming from the future. It's 9
yeah.
a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful day. So you're going to get through it. It's going to be fine.
I love it. Yeah. Is there anything we need to know about what's happening over the next however many hours that is?
I can't give any future warnings about Twin Tower events or anything. It's just going to be a beautiful day. That's all I've got.
Well, I love the accent, but so I want to start with talking about your book, Financial Secrets Revealed. So tell me about why you wrote this book and kind of just what your book is about.
Sure. So I've been an avid reader since I was a little kid. And I think, writing a book was probably something I've always wanted to do. I can't remember a time when I didn't want to write a book. And growing up with my mother's Georgette Heyer novels, I didn't know if I was going to write some witty romance from a former century that I know nothing about, or some lusty, smutty, bodice busting book that seems to be all the rage. And yeah, fell back on the very practical. I'm a financial advisor. Why don't I write what I know about?
Smart.
But then it was, look, budgets have been done to death. Money's, everyone's got a book on money. Where do I start with something that's a little bit different but still interesting? And I'm someone who's very fascinated by stories. I'm very nosy. I love hearing about people, where you're from, what's your background, what makes you you. And there's people who have beautifully decided to share those stories with me. So it's an interview style book where I wanted to know people's money stories, whether they were surviving on Social Security or running multi-million-dollar businesses, or other financial advisors as well. Like, what are the best money tips? What are these secrets that we don't hear about, that we're not taught in school? What did your parents teach you? Inevitably nothing. What do you want to teach your kids? What are the best tips you've been given? How do you get over hardship? So all those questions to a mighty different array of people is what brought the book together.
So that's fascinating. How did you find the people to interview for the book?
Many were friends and colleagues, and some were referrals. So I was reaching out to different people I knew in different circumstances about their stories. And one lady said, "Oh, I know this guy who was an astronaut. Would you want to interview him?" I'm like, "Sure." Why would you? So, just some fascinating people going, I think this person would be a good fit for you. Other people did it and went, "Actually, that's really confronting. Can we not share my story?" So there was, really, really different responses. They sort of went through the whole process and sort of said, "Yeah, I need to sit with this myself for a while. I haven't thought through these things before." So it was a very interesting process, and most people beautifully and happily ready to share their secrets.
Yeah. Well, so you talked about kind of the different types of people. Were there or different kinds of I guess like financial situations? Were there kind of themes that you found throughout the book or throughout your interviews with people that you could pull together to share, or like lessons that you learned? I guess it's secrets revealed, right? So were there also lessons learned in that you kind of teach the reader through the book?
Yeah, so there was a financial advisor in the UK who has a young son, and he broke his iPad and he wanted to teach him the value of money. And he sort of sat down and worked out, okay, Dad has to work this many hours to make the amount of money that we need to replace this, to show that there's, you know, a time money value. And there was another entrepreneur lady from Australia who's a serial entrepreneur, sold businesses. She does not want her children to equate time and money. So she's, because, you know, super business owner, and it's about doing projects. So there's two very, very different money ideas. Neither of them are wrong. You know, for most people, time is money. It's that simple. You know, you go to work, you make this much per hour. It does take you 10, 20, 30 hours to replace the iPad. Whereas, okay, if I do this project for someone and it's going to, you know, net me this amount of money, sure, it might be a drop in the bucket to buy the iPad, but I've still got to do the work. So there was a couple of sort of conflicting things. I think one of the overarching themes is when you ask people, what did your parents teach you about money? There's always that initial nothing. We didn't discuss it. And you dig a bit deeper, and then there was, oh, they did sort of say money didn't grow on trees, or it takes money to make money, or it's up to the man to bring home the bacon, like these cliches that we've heard over the years. So there were lessons, but, you know, were they then valuable? Did you want to pull those apart at some stage and go, does that still serve me? Do I believe in scarcity or abundance? And it became really apparent about the generational ideas about money, like this post-war, our grandparents and great-grandparents living, and I remember the bread and dripping, and we didn't have anything for dinner. You know, we darned our stockings, we put our buttons back on our shirts, and, you know, we reduced, we reused, we recycled, we composted, we did all these things. And now we've got this incredible consumerism, throwaway society, trash is nothing, you know, get rid of your dinner. And it's a very different mindset of how we've gone from this, we don't know where the next thing's coming from, we're living on ration cards, to, you know, this incredible space that we're in now. So seeing that change over the last, you know, we're talking only 80 years. It's been a monumental shift. So that was really fascinating for me as well.
It's, when you were saying that, it reminds me of, it's interesting. I had another interview today for the podcast. I think they'll probably be back-to-back episodes, but I can't promise that right now, so I don't want to tell people wrong. But and the topic of money came up, even though it wasn't even like what her book was about, but that had come up. And I remember saying, you know, that kind of, same kind of thing, or she was actually equating that to owning a business and talking about, what did your parents teach you about money? If you're going to own a business, like that kind of also, like, I don't know, comes through in the way that you maybe run a business, or, you know, the way you start a business. Anyways, and then it's funny that you said that. I was thinking, like, well, my parents didn't really teach me much, but my dad was an accountant. So, like, you know, I feel like he was just on top of money. Like, there was not really, like, it wasn't like a topic we avoided, but also we just didn't really talk about it. But then when you were talking about that, like, I remember, I just had like this flashback memory of my dad, like when we were eating, saying like, there's kids starving in China, you know, like, eat your dinner. Right. And
we
like,
will
now
send it to them.
right. Like, and now I think kids are like, if you were to say that to them, which I don't think anyone my generation says that to our kids now, but
probably not.
Excuse me. But if you were to say that to them, they would say, so what does me eating this piece of, you know, this fork full of green beans do for that kid in China? Right. Like,
it was Africa for the Australians, starving kids in Africa.
Maybe it was Africa. I don't remember. I had this like flash of memory of that when you were saying that. It is amazing how much that has changed from, you know, over the just a few generations. So in your work as you said you're a financial advisor, right? Did you learn any themes, like, or any, I don't know, those lessons that you learned in the book? I know you said like one isn't right or wrong or whatever, like looking at money as like time as money versus looking at money as well, not looking at money as time as money, but, you know, not equating it to your time. What kind of, I don't know, I guess lessons did you pull from that you either teach your clients or that you were able to kind of apply to the work that you do as an advisor?
I think what the outstanding thing was that the tips that get people ahead are really boring. They're the very cliched, you know, take care of the pennies and the pounds take care of themselves. It's the, know your numbers, do your budget, be in control. It's the really boring stuff that actually makes a difference. So, which people don't want to hear. They want the sexy investment strategy. They want the get rich quick scheme. They want the, the pizzazz and all the rest of it. But it's the really easy, boring stuff that is going to get you ahead. People hear the word budget and their eyes glaze over and they don't want to be part of it because it's so boring. And the reality is it's confronting because you think it's not going to be what I want it to be and I don't want to have to deal with that. Whereas if you think, okay, I'm going to be in control of my finances from this moment forward. And if I know that it costs me $863 per week to breathe, that's my rates, my insurance, my water, my petrol, my gas, my car, my this, my whatever, that if I'm not earning that $863 a week, I'm either in a bad position where I've got to reconsider and either cut back on my expenses or get that promotion I've been thinking I deserved for the last 3 years, or take on a second job, or I actually have money left over. Now I'm in control. What am I going to do with that extra $50 or $100 or $300, whatever it is? Suddenly we're in control. And it might be, yeah, I really want that pair of Christian Louboutins or the shoes or the, whatever, the handbag, or it might be, you know what, I've got debt I want to get rid of. I actually want to have a baby in the next 10 years and I'm going to start putting away for that. This mortgage is killing us. I actually want to get that down. So really powerful to take that control and know your numbers, because, and it does change all the time. I mean, our cost of living, what we used to be able to get in the grocery bag for, $100, we cannot do anymore. My groceries cost me $390 last week, and it wasn't even a week when I did my meat shopping. It was a big shop because it's Christmas, but that's an outrageous amount of money to spend on fresh produce and, a bit of bread and, some supplies for your kitchen. So we don't live in a world where, $50, $100 can, feed a family for the week. And it's hard, but having that control factor, I think, instead of being bored by it or confronted by it, view it as, this is my spending plan. This is me taking back control over the finances. I'm going to swear it's as boring as batshit, but I'm not allowed. I hope I'm allowed to say that. But it puts you in the driver's seat. So I think stop looking for the sexy answers and just get back to basics.
Yeah, that's great. So, the title of my podcast is Beyond the Bestseller. And the reason for that title, the reason behind that title is because I think that many people who write a book have a purpose in writing their book that isn't just about becoming a bestseller. It isn't about, even like the sales that you're going to get from it. It's that message that you want to share with people. So what was beyond the bestseller for you? What was your purpose in writing this book in the first place? And like, who did you want to reach with it?
So mine was for an end consumer. I knew, look, the book style I was writing wasn't going to, heading up the New York Times bestseller list because of the style. It was also to position me as an authority in my field. I mean, the fact that I have been doing this for 20 years, I have a master of financial planning. The fact that you're an author gives you a different style of cachet with some people. I mean, for people who love books and love reading, and there's that, oh, she must know what she's talking about, she's written a book. So there's
clout.
that's part of the reason, you do set yourself up as, she must know what she's talking about, she's got a book. So I then started a podcast of the same name. Two of the stories inspired me to go on an amazing tangent that women shared their stories of financial abuse with me, which, as an advisor, I'm thinking, why haven't I heard about this? This is a really interesting subject. What is this financial abuse? So I went down this rabbit hole after hearing these stories and ended up writing a course globally for financial advisors to understand the red flags of financial abuse and what can they do about it and how can they help their clients, and should we be trying to prevent it with financial literacy lessons and an awareness campaign. So it sort of started something that snowballed as well, which I wasn't expecting. So yeah, look, it's a lovely journey and who knows where it'll take you.
Yeah. So I just want to touch on that for a second. So early in my career, for a short period of time, I worked in domestic violence in domestic violence shelter. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that financial abuse piece and kind of what that looks like and what that means. Because I think, you had mentioned it to me before we started recording, and I was like, wait, explain that, what you mean a little bit more. I didn't know if you were talking about domestic abuse, but you are. So can you share a little bit more about that and kind of what you learn, like what happens there and kind of what that looks like?
Sure. Look, I think since, the Me Too movement, people are more open to talking about domestic violence. And in the past, it's been sort of the quiet, shameful family secret that, he does that to her, but we don't talk about that. So there's that quietness that's, allowed it to flourish in the dark. And now that people are ready to come out and share, it turns out over 99% of domestic violence cases use coercive control with finances as one of the main scare factors, especially in a society where we've grown up where the men are the breadwinner and the wife is the carer. That's been fairly standard, for many generations, that the easiest way to control someone is cut off their access to funds. So I think America did this Purple Purse campaign a few years ago. To look that up, it's amazing, about, finding out about abuse and do you know what to do when you see it. And it's basically just restricting or removing someone's access to resources. It could be saying, look, you're not allowed to pursue that particular career. And the lady in my book, her husband forbade her from continuing as a journalist. He wanted her to stack shelves at the local supermarket until her daughter went, Mummy, that's not what you do. And then it was her moment of clarity going, I've got to get out of here. So there are those sort of things, and elder financial abuse is massive as well. It's, rewriting dad's will, it's stealing money off the nightstand, it's making sure those term deposits papers disappear, making sure that the one sibling who wants it all gets the power of attorney. Those insidious, horrible things where money is the key focus, and to hell with, emotion, family, love, all the rest of it. It's about getting what you can. And it's such a horrible thing, but it is the easiest way. I mean, in Australia, and I'm sure it's true in other places, the biggest area of homelessness is women over 55 living in their cars. Sometimes with their children and pets, because they can no longer afford, it's the cliche, hubby runs off with the secretary, keeps all the assets, and until she can find a lawyer who can work for her and help her, or, the shelter, it's living in the vehicle. It's a horrific scene. It opened my eyes to something called granny dumping, where, elderly people are dropped at places and maybe you do or don't come back for them. I learned the term period poverty, where your partner doesn't allow you access to sanitary items, during that time of the month. There's women stealing socks from laundromats to put in their underpants because they aren't allowed to buy pads and tampons. It's a horrific and really awful and widespread form of abuse that is just not talked about.
Wow. I don't hear, I mean, you hear about, violence in the home, right? But you don't hear about the financial abuse. I like that. I don't like the statistic, but I like that you had that statistic about 99% of those, because any of the women that I worked with at that time, absolutely, I could see that would have been happening. But what you don't see is the people who you don't see any other evidence of that type of abuse at all, right? You don't know that that's happening, but she's just being maybe kind of like
Controlled.
minimized, controlled within her home in a way that, like, she also doesn't know how to, what to do about it. I mean, it's not obvious to other people. So anyway, that's gave me like chills just talking about that.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
But we do need the spotlight on it.
Does your training that you mentioned, you go into some of that for financial advisors on like kind of what to look for, those signs?
Yeah, so just the course itself discusses what are the red flags. It goes through various case studies of women I've met. I've interviewed women who've said, and asked the questions, what could a professional or a friend or someone have done to change things for you? So asking the hard questions of how can we help? And for some women, when they're in it, the answer is nothing. I loved him. I didn't want to move out. I was blinded. And it's not until many years later they go, oh, God, what was I thinking?
Right. Right.
The scales come off. So I think just being aware of changing circumstances. There was a very high profile murder case in Australia where a man murdered his wife when the children went to school and she wanted to go back to work. And he was so controlling of her that threatened him so much, he killed her, joined the search for her body, all this sort of stuff. And the parents of the lady who was murdered started a campaign later with the hashtag Say Something. They watched their daughter shrivel emotionally. They watched him take credit cards off her. They watched her shoes wear out and she wasn't allowed to buy any. And they just went, look, it's their marriage. It's between them. It's not up to us to interfere. And then all of a sudden she's dead. She's gone. And they never said anything. You know, could they have just said, we notice things aren't right, sweetheart. We're here for you. We notice that you haven't had a new pair of shoes for a while. And I think even that with our friends, you know, is it worth risking the friendship over? To me, the answer is a resounding yes. You know, do I want to be the one where my girlfriend has been murdered? Go, I should have said something. I did notice this. You know, there was something niggling at me at the time. And I use an old psychologist thing. It's I feel when, because I feel really sad that you can't come out with us anymore because, you know, you used to have so much fun on cocktail night or when we got together once a quarter with the girls or, you know, because they're my feelings. It's very hard to go, don't tell me what to do. If I went in and said, Tim's a dick, he's not letting you do this and I hate him and you can't, it's very confronting. And, you know, if you're talking about someone this woman loves, it's, you know, she's going to get defensive. So I think wording it that I'm feeling really sad that you're not out and about. So the I feel when because can be a powerful tool of, look, these are my feelings. And look, I'm here if you want to talk about it without the confrontation, because the woman knows better than anybody else if she's in a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And just letting her know that someone sees that. Sometimes they think, you know, they're being so gaslit, they think they're crazy and making it all up.
Yeah.
The fact that somebody sees it is, oh my God, maybe I'm not going mental after all.
Yeah. So do you know of any, and it's okay if the answer is no, but do you know of any resources for women who are in situations like that? Because I do think because we kind of went down this path in our conversation, I'd love to share resources in the show notes for anyone who may be listening.
Look, I'd love to share those. That Purple Purse campaign about what can we say and do to help people is really great. I'm happy to share that. A lot of the large banks now in Australia, so I'm assuming America and around the world as well, would have resources on financial abuse. Some banks now even offer what they call secret accounts, where a woman is in a domestic violence situation. They will not send statements. You do not have a card. The only way you can access that money is to go in and show your ID so that nobody knows about these secret accounts if you need to stash money for your future safety or when you're, you know, able to make your escape plan. So there are a lot of tips out there now. Look, shelters, financial counsellors, all available. But look, I'm happy to share some resources to put in the show notes for people who, you know, want to help.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, because I've never heard of that before, the bank account thing, or, you know, so yeah, I think that would be great. We'll add some of that in there. We'll also link to your book in the show notes, but is there anything else that you'd like me to share, or anything that or I guess any other way that people can get in touch with you or find out more about what you do, your course, and anything else that we haven't even been able to cover?
Look, I am on LinkedIn. If you look up Amanda Cassar, that's me. I'm not the American yoga instructor. So make sure you look at the Australian Amanda.
Got it.
It'll be the .com.au. That's me. So yeah, look, you Google me, you'll find me if you type in Amanda Cassar or financial abuse. I don't know if they're the greatest links to have in the world, but you will find me.
Great. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your book with us. It sounds like a really interesting adventure that you went on to write that book. And I'm so glad that you went through that so that you can also share that story with us. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Kelly. It's great.
For a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey, join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyshuckneck.com.